This is ChangeMakers with Katie Gore, finding the right solutions for the affordable housing community.
This week's Changemaker is Capri Roth, the Executive Vice President of Real Estate Development at the East Bay Asian Local Development Corporation, or ABOLDC for short. Capri is an active policy and community advocate that believes everyone should have an affordable and safe place to live. Her focus is on acquisition, development, and rehabilitation of East Bay's affordable housing and commercial portfolio, including a pipeline of over 1,000 housing units spread across 13 properties. Capri, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Katie. I'm really excited to be here.
We've got a great array of things we want to talk about here. Everything from the Development Corporation to what you guys are planning in Oakland. But first, let's start by covering how you got into affordable housing. I like to start these conversations just understanding people's background, so it reflects so much on the work that we do. So start us from scratch. How did you get into housing?
Maybe a little bit of a roundabout answer, but it was a roundabout path. I grew up in Allentown, Pennsylvania, which is the city that has, I think, a pretty infamously significant economic upheaval in the 80s and 90s, which is, when I was growing up. It was a big shift from a blue-collar, industrial-based middle-class economy to a really socially and economically stratified service-based economy. And that was a pretty formative experience for me. And I think seeing that shift happen and the implications to the different neighborhoods in Allentown was, really influential in what attracted me to community development as an industry. Specifically to affordable housing, it's somewhat accidental. Is actually family business. When I graduated college, I was working for CDFI, really in the small business area. And unfortunately, that was the mid to late 2000s. And I really struggled to maintain that career path during the recession. So when I came out of my MBA program, graduate school in 2011, that was kind of the tail end of the recession. And I was sort of cobbling together different part-time consulting jobs. And my dad, my father, is actually an affordable housing developer and consultant. So through him, I just had a lot of familiarity with the industry. I had some connections through my CDFI experiences and just found over time that I was leaning more into that and have really found a home here in affordable housing development over the last decade or so.
So how did you get from Allentown, Pennsylvania to where you are now in Oakland?
Yeah, so I did move out to California for an affordable housing development job. I took a job as a project manager with a company called Terex Development, which is based here in the East Bay in Northern California.
So we've had the Oakland Housing Authority CEO, Patricia Wells, on our podcast as a previous guest. And we don't usually repeat a lot of cities, but what you guys do is so unique. We really wanted to bring in another perspective here. But start us off. Don't assume we know anything about the Oakland market or what you're doing. So just really start us off with what are some of the specific affordable housing challenges for your area? And then we'll go through and talk about what you guys are doing.
Sure. I do want to just say before we do that, I just want to really highlight how fortunate we are in Oakland to have Patricia and her team. I really, as part of discussing challenges and solutions, it's hard to think of better partners than the Oakland Housing Authority. They're really innovative. They're really, I think, a special group, a special agency, and a great partner. And especially because we're facing, a pretty serious crisis or several crises actually that may be overlapping to each other. So I think, big challenges at a big picture, probably hard to start somewhere other than homelessness, which has really been growing here and in different ways. So in 2022, the point in time count, I think, identified over 5,000 homeless residents in the city. That's a pretty startling number and has grown significantly in just a few years. Homelessness is sort of one piece of the housing crisis. I think there's another piece of the housing crisis, which is that there's a lot of displacement happening here, especially in low-income households. Oakland is a city that has really strong historic Black neighborhoods. It has really strong historic long-standing immigrant neighborhoods, and those neighborhoods are very disproportionately impacted by the kind of displacement pressure that comes from an overall housing affordability crisis. Thinking about the challenges, one of the challenges is that these aren't easy problems to solve. And one of the things that makes it very difficult in Oakland, I would say, is that as a city, Oakland has fewer resources than some of our nearby jurisdictions. So San Francisco and Silicon Valley have such a robust economic community or local economy that they are able to put forward a lot of funding for affordable housing. And Oakland isn't really the same in that way, but our cost to develop affordable housing really is the same. So it's an expensive place to do this work, and there's really not enough money to meet the demand. And I think that that combination is part of why you just see the, continuing exacerbation of the housing crisis here.
So tell us what you're doing at East Bay Asian Local Development Corporation, because you guys are really playing a crucial role here in trying to tackle some of what you just described.
Yeah, absolutely. So Ibaltsi is, I would say, a pretty traditional community development corporation in the sense that affordable housing is, one leg of our organization, one part of what we do, but we really look at, approaching a wide range of solutions to, community investment and lifting up the people that live in our neighborhoods. So, as an affordable housing developer, we're working on a lot of pretty great mixed use projects. We have a lot of infill, urban, transit oriented development in our pipeline. And that's really kind of, I would say that's where Ibaltsi is really strong in real estate. Outside of our real estate development, we have a pretty robust service program that goes well beyond just our, resident services that we provide in properties, but we have really great after school programs. We have a fantastic economic opportunities department that focuses on bringing sort of financial services to the community at large. And so I think we're really trying to take a multifaceted approach, both to, increasing the amount of affordable housing, increasing the quality of affordable housing and people's access to it, but also trying to improve people's quality of life in pretty well-rounded ways.
Well, you may have called yourself a traditional CDC, but you have such unique dynamics going on in Oakland and the region, the construction costs you just mentioned, but you guys are still delivering quite a bit of service that is unique. And I think about the early origination of how you guys got started. Why don't you explain some of that to us? Because that really set the tone when there was demolition that was happening and you guys as a corporation really stepped in to try to solve some of that. Why don't you walk us back through some of those early days?
Yeah, absolutely. So Ibaltsi was founded in 1975. That was a period of time where there was a lot of big public works and redevelopment kind of projects happening, most namely the establishment of the BART system, which is our regional local transit system. Those efforts ended up clearing, I think, about 10,000 units of affordable housing. And I don't mean deed restricted affordable housing. I just mean, homes that people could afford in downtown Oakland and that, out of the Chinatown neighborhood. So that was sort of set in the landscape, was that there was just this mass displacement happening and people were really feeling impacted by it. The founders of Ibaltsi were a group of Chinatown community leaders and student activists who saw a need to kind of centralize the services of a range of nonprofits that were specifically serving Oakland's Chinatown community. So these were health-based services or immigration services that were providing, language and culturally appropriate contact for residents in the neighborhood. And the organizers really wanted to create that kind of central base of support. So to do that, they ended up acquiring and redeveloping a kind of aging abandoned warehouse into a property that we still own and operate. It's called the Asian Resource Center, and it's currently home to about 20 nonprofits and small businesses. It's right in the heart of Chinatown. From there, we did get into affordable housing development in the late 1980s. We kind of started right around the same time as the LIHTC program. And since then, we've grown quite a bit. We have 35 properties that we've developed since then over that time.
You mentioned that some of them are mixed use and transit oriented. Why don't you describe some of those to us?
We have a lot. I think the one that's sort of the best example, and actually is kind of the full circle with the Chinatown history, is that we're actually working on a master plan site with a development partner, a market rate development partner. We're working on a 2-block site that is owned by BART in that Chinatown neighborhood. In fact, one of our staff people, when we tour the site, often points out and says, "Oh, my father-in-law's house was there on, that part of the block just before they cleared it for BART." So we're looking to redevelop these two blocks of BART-owned land, and Ebald sees, 2 developments on those sites will be both about 100 units, and one will be a senior affordable housing, and the other will be family targeted. And we're doing that, in concert with this market rate developer who are looking at, both market rate apartments and commercial office space on the site. So, it's been a really great long-term process to plan with the neighborhood and with BART as a public agency and the city of Oakland for how we can reimagine those 2 blocks into a really rich and vibrant mixed-use area that will help to connect the neighborhood that was in some ways destroyed when BART came in originally.
So are you finding financing packaging to be some of the major obstacles, or is it just trying to find those infill lots? What would you say are some of the obstacles that you have to overcome to make these developments happen?
Yeah, I think financing absolutely is our number one challenge. California is an extremely competitive development environment. Oakland is not the most high resource in terms of dollars available jurisdiction. And it's very expensive to develop. So I think, like any other affordable housing developer that you would speak to in California, have really experienced the need to, cobble together 7 or 8 different sources of funds to finance all of these projects, which is a long and challenging process.
So you mentioned a few of the roadblocks to delivering an affordable housing portfolio, like financing or even how it affects the environment. But I'd love to dig a little more into the research that your team has actually done in this area.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think you're talking about the white paper that we completed in 2022 that was funded by JP Morgan Chase, who gave us a grant to look into volumetric modular construction and construction innovation more generally, in pursuit of thinking about how to contain costs in development. We spent more than a year. It was a process that did get a little bit delayed by COVID, but we spent more than a year doing research, case studies, and conducting interviews with folks that are in the volumetric modular industry, either as architects or developers or financing. We talked to really a wide range of stakeholders and some modular producers to best understand, what are some of the best practices? What are some of the pitfalls? How can this work? Is it the silver bullet? And I think what we learned from that process is that, like many other things in affordable housing, it's complicated. I think we learned that modular construction has the potential to be a really valuable tool in the toolbox, and it can increase the cost and the speed of delivery for affordable housing, but it's not a silver bullet, and it doesn't work that well on every site. So I think that was really encouraging is that when you have a good site for it, and so in my mind, what I learned is that means it's a large, rationally shaped site. So it's not irregular, it's a rectangle or it's a square, and it's flat and it's easy access for delivery. So you've got big streets nearby, You're not kind of going down a narrow alley trying to make the space work. If you have that kind of a site and you bring on very early in your project a development team, and by development team, I mean not just yourself, the developer, but the architect, your contractor, select a factory, get a lender in place, get an insurance team in place, and starting from very early in the process, you all start working together with the vision in hand of delivering a very specific result. That is where modular shines. And I think what I would say is that is a very big change to how we have gotten used to developing properties. When we were talking to people, what I heard was that the mere thought of not going out into a competitive bidding environment after designing your buildings is pretty radical. That's a big change to a lot of people. But what we saw was the projects that were most successful, so the ones that attained the best cost savings, the fastest execution, they did just that. They assembled their entire team before they even put pencil to paper. Every step of the way was kind of a joint effort to say, our goal is, cheap and fast and high quality, and how do we get there? So that's a big shift in how we do things. And I don't know that our industry and our funding streams are totally set up to embrace that shift at a very rapid clip. I hope we continue to see movement in that direction. Thinking about how this connects just generally to the roadblocks for developing affordable housing. Like I was saying before, in Oakland, we're very resource constrained, but that's true for many, many areas in California and, of course, across the country. And I think what we're seeing is that we need to see those gains in cost efficiency in order to make the most of the limited dollars that are available. In Oakland, we have a new mayor, Shing Tao, who has shared that she wants to see 30,000 units of affordable housing come online in the next 8 years, which is an extremely ambitious goal, but it's totally appropriate given the level of need in the city. There's no way that we could get there without using the kinds of innovations like modular and new ways of thinking about affordable housing development. We have to pursue new ideas, otherwise we cannot meet those goals.
The need is there, and 30,000 units is an ambitious number. So, like you mentioned, you're going to have to put together modular, mixed, all kinds of, ADUs, I'm assuming, lots and lots of different tools, as you mentioned in the toolkit. Are you seeing any conversion of office spaces? I know several people are talking about that in high-priced markets. Is that part of the equation also?
I think it's certainly something that is being looked at. I can say at Ibalti, we don't have any of those projects in our pipeline now. We've looked at a couple of kind of adaptive reuse opportunities, but more traditionally in that kind of warehouse space rather than in traditional office buildings. I'm open to it. I know the city's open to it. I think the state is actually looking to encourage it. State of California has passed a bill to effectively establish a grant program to help fund those kinds of conversion adaptive reuse projects. So I certainly imagine we'll start seeing some of those projects over the next couple of years.
Since you have joined Ebaltc, you have overseen the development, acquisition, and rehabilitation of lots of units, and you have represented over $300 million in asset value. I read an editorial that said your organization is one of the most effective affordable housing development programs in the East Bay area. So share with us your secret to success, because that's very impressive, both in asset value and in those accolades.
I think the first thing I would say in terms of the asset value is that that's really a reflection of the market that we're in. So this is a high cost, high value market, and the dollar's really at it quick. But where Ibaltc has been successful, I would uplift that I work with a really talented team. They're so resilient. We have so many major hurdles and challenges in our work. It's really necessary to have the kind of passion and perseverance to do the kind of work that we're looking to do in a location like Oakland. within our department, I really strive to maintain a culture of empowerment. And I think that is reflected in the work that our staff do. So I'm very impressed all the time, every day, by the sophistication and the skill of our project managers who are pushing our projects forward, and the overall collaborative environment here at Ebaldsey is pretty special. The other thing that we do that is probably a little bit different than some other developers is that we have a healthy neighborhoods framework for our community development efforts, including affordable housing. That involves working with a lot of community partners. It involves setting up collaborative efforts, both around affordable housing and our other work in the neighborhoods. And the result of that kind of partnership and collaborative approach is that we have collective impact that's really amplified. And so I think that's a lot of the reason why Ebaldsey is oftentimes seen as a leader in this space. And it's really special to hear that, being recognized.
And I want to get into more of your collaborative efforts and your team, but let's stop here. Coming up in the second part of my talk with Capri Roth, the Executive Vice President of Real Estate Development at Ebaldsey, Capri shares the importance of diversity in partnerships.
We have partnerships where it's not so much only about creating more affordable housing, but it's about creating a total that is larger than the sum of its parts.
Thanks for listening to ChangeMakers with Katie Gore. To find out more about Katie, go to quadel.com. That's QUADEL.com. This has been a production of Forbes Books Radio.